That's cool, right? How long have we known each other? 10 years?
Longer than that.
No, oh
You
my
can see it
God.
in my gray hair all over. Yes, it's been
No,
a
you
while.
still look at him. Look at how fantastic he looks. I hope that the camera will zoom on his shoes, because his shoes are probably the most fantastic shoes I've ever seen on stage. So yeah, 10 years. Tell us, you're going to talk about, I mean, you'll see what you're going to talk about, guys. I don't want to preempt what Brian is going to say, but what have you seen in the last 10 years? Have you been to Bulgaria before, or is it your first time?
This is my first time, so thank you.
Oh, wow.
Thank you for inviting me.
There.
Thank you.
Have you seen the world change a lot between the first time we met and the time now?
It's amazing if you ask a question like that, the answer is, of course, yes. But when you think about how much has changed in the last 10 years, the iPhone is celebrating its 11th anniversary.
Right.
Facebook, I think, went public in 2006. Instagram, Snapchat, yes, it has changed dramatically. But I think the thing that's most interesting is that we haven't realized how much we have changed as individuals, how we talk differently, how we communicate differently, how we connect differently. So yes, the answer is it's been radical, and it's been so difficult to keep up with all of the change that I stopped tracking technology and started to track human behavior, because it changes, but it moves slower. And as I get older, it's easier to keep up with.
Well, there's two things that I believe that as human beings we do well, or some people even might say separates us from the rest of the animals on this planet, is we create tools, technology to make our lives better, and we create myth, stories to actually, tell a story, gather around a fire, and actually, create a better place. And that's exactly what I'm going to leave you to do, is create a story for these people. They're all waiting for you guys. The last round of applause. Brian Solis.
Thanks, Paul. Well, it is really an honor to be here, and thank you again for inviting me. I think the best way to talk about innovation and change is through PowerPoint. I'm just kidding, but it's all I have. I wanted to talk to you about digital transformation, because it is probably one of the biggest trends around the world. Because even though we're here in Bulgaria, we all live on the internet. And we create this global life. We learn from companies and from entrepreneurs and from our peers all over the world. And we take those insights and we translate them to what we do here. I don't just study Silicon Valley, that's where I'm from. I study the whole world. And digital transformation, regardless of the size of your company, whether it's a startup or whether it's a global enterprise, change is inevitable. We all have to adapt. Even if we have the best idea today, it will only survive as long as it's relevant. What I wanted to share with you is the gift of perspective. And I think it's also one of the most challenging things to actually have, is the gift of perspective, to see things as they are. As Paul asked, what have you noticed in the last 10 years? Well, the answer is everything. But have we really noticed the change? Because we are actually part of the change. And as Paul asked you to applaud yourselves in what you're doing here today, being here today, and learning from one another, and inspiring one another, please realize that at the end of this conference, it's what you do differently that defines the future, that defines your legacy. Because if all we do is reinforce what it is that we believe today without learning, then we're on a path to what I call iteration instead of innovation. And iteration is doing the same things, but better. Whereas innovation is doing new things that unlocks new value. The challenge that we have, and I study digital transformation, I study innovation, is that success is a poor teacher. But we realize that success is also a great thing. And the reason why I say success is a poor teacher is because it lulls us into complacency. When Paul talked about being lazy, we build our future upon the past experiences that we love, that we feel were successful. But that puts us on a path, at best, to iteration. We live in a time that I call digital Darwinism. Technology evolves. We all see it. We all have the latest mobile devices. We all have the latest apps. But society also evolves. Technology evolves, society evolves. And this is one of the reasons why many years ago I became a digital anthropologist, was to study how we were changing so that when it comes to innovation, we could reverse engineer new things that matter to people as they progress, instead of thinking about new things that matter just for us. We all have heard the term the Kodak moment. Some of you are young and probably never even heard of Kodak, but I'll explain it. I wanted to share this with you because the Kodak moment was probably one of the most powerful mantras and taglines in the world. It's very nostalgic. It's also one of the most often, maybe overused examples of what happens when you don't innovate. And the famous story is that Kodak sat on some of the most advanced digital photography patents and then didn't execute. That's not the story I want to tell. I want to tell the story of the Kodak moment and how human behavior becomes the source of true inspiration. The Kodak moment was very special because, for those who remember, there was someone in your house who was the keeper of your memories. They always had pictures, they had albums, they had boxes of photographs. They would always come out at family events where they would embarrass you when you brought home someone you were dating. Oh, look when they were young, and oh, stop showing that picture. But over time, our relationship with pictures has changed. I want you to think about all of the pictures that are on your phone right now that you are never going to see again. Our relationship with pictures has changed. It's no longer so much about memories as it is about real-time experiences. That's why we take pictures of food. You're never going to go back to that 7 years from now. Oh my gosh, that was the best dinner I've ever had. We're changing. The Kodak moment is no longer about memories. It's now about that moment when we don't realize how people are changing, because that is the source of innovation. Mindset is the biggest gift. Perspective is the biggest gift when it comes to digital transformation. For a lot of you who work with big organizations or institutions or politicians, there is a mindset that is absolutely rooted in the past. And a lot of decisions are being made based on how we know the world, based on what's made us successful to this day. But that is not a guarantee for what's going to make us successful in the future. Digital transformation is complicated, mostly because the name digital transformation. It assumes that we're talking about technology, which is part of the story. But what is happening today is it's an opportunity to reinvent everything, how we work, why we work, our processes, our policies, all rooted in the perspective of how we see people changing. I documented how companies are evolving from being traditional to being innovative. And every time I talk to companies all around the world, they'll say, oh yeah, we are here. We are so advanced in our digital transformation. And then when I study the organization, I see that they're actually further behind than they really think they are. And it comes down to perspective. I ran some research with a company called Capgemini last year where we studied innovation of global enterprises, every country around the world, and only 7%, so pathetic, only 7% of companies have a culture where they can test and learn new ideas. So innovation is impossible in that regard. But almost every company said the reason why they cannot innovate is because the culture of the organization sucks. It's because you don't feel like you have the power or the support to chase new ideas. And that is the heart and soul of innovation. We can't do anything different if we don't change how we go throughout our life. Tomorrow, when you wake up, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, next month, next year, what are you going to do differently that allows you to open a new path? What are you going to do not just to unlock your own ideas, but also unlock the ideas of people around you? That's the definition, by the way, of true leadership. It's not how many people you can get to follow you and to pursue your idea. It's how many people you can empower around you to change the world. That is leadership. The challenge that we have is that we were all taught from childhood to where we are today to follow the rules. Follow the rules at school. Follow the rules at work. Follow the rules in life. Do this, don't do this. Following the rules is the enemy of innovation. Innovation asks you to break the rules. But breaking the rules is 100% impossible when you are supported by the rules, because it's the comfort that we know. It is our center of reference. It's how we make decisions. It's how we make bets. It's how we take risks, all based on the center of reference that we know, which is defined by the rules that we follow. This is a very important time in our life. You're seeing change everywhere. We can be part of that change. But I think part of what's so special about now, what's so inspiring, is not just the learning that we all need, it's the unlearning. It's unlearning those rules that define today's standards. Those rules are old. Those rules defined yesterday. And this is why it's scary, but it's also why it's so powerful and promising, is that as we unlearn the standards that we hold ourselves to, the rules that we follow, then anything becomes possible. I talk about this moment as a prelude to innovation. Every great story of innovation, every great story of transformation is personal. It's a deal that you make with yourself about what you're going to do differently leaving here, how you're going to see things differently, what you're going to try differently. Because once you see the world differently, everything around you suddenly becomes alive. You start to see things that you didn't see before because we were following the rules. For example, it's 2018, and we still click a 3.5-inch floppy disk to save a file. And for those who are younger and have no idea what I'm talking about, we used to save files on these things called 3.5-inch disks. But to everyone else who's younger, that's just the save icon, right? And so when we're making decisions about the future for a group of people who have no idea what a floppy disk is, it looks like this. Hey, have you ever seen one of these? Oh, that's so cool. You 3D printed the save icon. This is what happens when we don't challenge our own conventions, our own beliefs, where success of past experiences got us to this moment. But for some of us, we see the world entirely differently. Right? There's a famous saying that the light bulb was not invented because we tried to make candles better. It was a new idea. It was a new moment. All innovation starts with perspective. How are you going to see things differently? Because the way we see things today is the way we are. The way we look at the world is projection. We project ourselves onto what we see. We validate it. It makes us feel better. Makes us feel comfortable. But innovation is about being uncomfortable. Learning how to take comfort in trying new things. That's why all innovation is personal. It starts with a new perspective, but you also feel it. You feel driven. You feel inspired to do something differently. Where I take inspiration is understanding that the older I get, the more open I have to be to seeing the world as it changes. That there is a new normal. And if I insist on projecting the normal that I know, then I become old. That's relevance. Trying to be relevant for society, for people that are different as they change. Because what happens over time is that businesses, governments, institutions, they get so caught up in the normal that they know, the rules that they know, the standards that they follow, the definitions of success. All the while, people are changing. They have different values, they have different behaviors, they have different expectations. And that creates an innovation divide. And this is why we see so much disruption all over the world, is that we think that people are going to keep coming to us because that's what we know, that's what we're doing, and we're trying to do that the best we can. But it's not going to change the fact that the world is going to continue to evolve. Someone has to build a bridge to the other side. That is innovation. Because over time, the standards that we know, the standards that we follow, start to grow apart. And it's how we chase that divide that defines what we do next, what we do differently. When I ask companies all around the world, hey, are you studying how your customers are changing? The answer is no. There's no time to do that. They're just trying to do what they know very well. Look at banks, look at finance, look at politics. It's so dated. The world is changing. The world is so different, and we didn't even realize how much it's changed until you look backwards and say, oh, yeah. I gave it a fancy name. I call it the law of accelerated societal and selfie disruption. That way it sounds official. But really, what it is that as we embrace technology, as we embrace new apps and services, it changes us. It just changes who we are, what we love, what's okay, what's not okay. The life that we project to everyone else is about selection, about how we just can't live being disconnected or how we can't live in the moment. This is a real shower curtain. Just launched in March, brand new. It doesn't have a pouch for just one device. You've got multiple devices. And I know some of you are thinking, like, you know what? I hope I start getting selfies from this. This is going to be fantastic. Think about this for a moment. I presented at a conference that was talking about the future of mobility and electric cars. And one of the biggest challenges that electric cars has is what's called range anxiety. Is people feel like their car will die and that they will be powerless. And so this is what's preventing sales. And they said, how are we going to disrupt this? We're going to bigger batteries, more charging stations. I said, you know what? You've got so many problems because we're not just worried about cars, we're worried about our phones. That is range anxiety. This is a real sidewalk in China. We all want this everywhere. I'm telling you, it's better. But for those who have been to the Netherlands, this is a real intersection. And this, to me, is a metaphor for innovation. I want you to think about this conversation that happened at the traffic engineering department in the Netherlands. Hey, Bob. We have a real problem here. People keep walking around on their phones, and they keep going into the street, and they're getting hit by bicycles and cars. We've got to do something. Well, Brian, let's just call that natural selection. If they don't want to save their own lives, why should we do it? Well, you've got a good point, Bob. Let's just let them all die. Or we can just fix the problem since they're not going to put their phones down by moving the light to a place where they can see it. They had to change. And while I don't necessarily support walking on your phone and getting hit by cars, it is the reality that leads to new ideas. This is a real dude. He didn't just want to have lunch outside. He wanted to have lunch in a whole other world. And the magic of this photo is the person behind him sort of representing the state that we're in. Just different lifestyles, different beliefs. Technology is changing us one by one. You're trying to innovate for people who like to vomit rainbows. Think about that. We talk about augmented reality and virtual reality as if it's like the future, yet it's already here. We call them filters. It's just changing us slowly and surely. And then if you really start to think about it, it's changing how we behave. It's changing how we communicate. It's changing the nature of our relationships. Snapchat turns conversations into moments. Instagram turns our life into something that's picture perfect. Facebook, it's a place for arguing about politics. YouTube, it's a rabbit hole of cat videos. It is endless about how much all of these technologies are changing us. But once you feel an experience, once you use a technology that becomes so transformative, it changes your standard for excellence. It changes your standards for service. It changes your expectations for engagement. And every company that you use, every company that's changing the world, you now compete against Apple. You compete against Netflix, even if they're not even in the same industry, because they are pushing the center of reference in new directions while you're still there. If you're waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you're on the wrong side of innovation. Staying where we are is comfortable. It feels safe, but it is not how we unlock the future. You're not alone. It is hard. Innovation and change is probably one of the hardest things that we have to do because it's human. Technology is the easy part. This is why perspective is so important. Can we allow ourselves to think differently? When someone tells you, you know what, let's try to be innovative. Let's go to a design thinking class. Let's follow IDEO. Let's think outside of the box. The problem with that is that it's all iteration, because you're not changing the rules. You're operating and trying to innovate within the rules and the norms that exist today. I think the magic of all of this is that there is no box. Innovation is a blank slate. If you allow yourself the freedom and the creativity to see things differently. For those who operate within big organizations, or for those who work with big companies, or even small companies, there's what I call digital change agents. There's people who see the world differently. There's people who need that light in the Netherlands on this street so that they can see when it's safe to cross. There's a whole different world out there, and that's who's inspiring us. And the digital change agents, that's you, that's me, that's why we're here, is because someone has to be the bridge builder. Someone has to be the architect from what was to what is happening to what will be. And it's a challenging role because you can't just have the idea. You have to have the ability to learn the art of communicating that idea so that other people don't feel threatened by it. They want to support it. And there's 4 roles that we take. One is what I call this data gatherer, or the storyteller, is taking these stories, taking this data, taking this information, and putting it together in a way that not just you understand, but the person you're trying to tell can understand. Because we all hear things differently. There's what you say, and then there's how someone else hears it. And storytelling about change and possibility for the way someone else hears it is where we start the journey. We have to also be an influencer to make the case, to get people to feel so compelled about this idea. We have to be a relationship builder because that's what this is all about. It's about working with other people to bring these ideas to life. And lastly, it's about being a champion or a cheerleader because it's hard. Every day, it's going to be harder. But that's why we're here, is because we're the ones who can bring about change and know that the enemies of innovation are all human. Egos, politics, fear. These are the things that we're working against. And understanding this helps us actually to bring these ideas to life. And that starts with purpose. It's a word I think that we might overuse a bit, but at its soul, in its soul, purpose is about doing something that's not just important to you, but it's important to someone else. Attaching your ideas to purpose that makes it relevant to someone else is when we can actually start to close the innovation divide. The future is human. It's difficult. I get that. I spent my entire career trying to get people to see things differently. And I haven't given up yet. But I believe that the future is going to happen to us or because of us. And I think we're watching what happens when people just wait. So that you become irrelevant. I think why we're all here together is because each of us realizes that we play a role in how this future unfolds. And it will take shape because of you and because of your ideas and because of the work that you're going to do differently leaving this conference. It has to start somewhere. You can't just wait for someone to tell us what to do. We're literally designing a new blueprint for the future of organizations, the future of business models, and how they operate, how they work, and why today. So here we are. We're at a crossroads. Binary. You have to make a choice. Leaving here today, what are you going to do? Let's do some crazy new shit. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Brian Solis, everyone. You know what? You just gave me an idea. Let's do a selfie with the crowd behind us.
Oh, well, if I stand on here, I'm the same height.
That's why I'm here, actually. Guys, you just stand up. 1, 2. Come on in, applaud him again.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.